Midnight, April 14th, 1945. A Dutch city called Zwolle sits behind enemy lines, occupied, fortified, and waiting for a Canadian assault that's about to level it with artillery. One soldier walks into that city, alone. He has 2 submachine guns, a bag of grenades, and 1 working eye. By sunrise, the entire German garrison will have fled, convinced they were just overrun by an entire army. There was no army. There was one man. This is the story of Léo Major, the soldier who refused to stop fighting after losing an eye, who captured 93 enemy soldiers by himself, and who is still, to this day, the only Canadian in history to be decorated for gallantry in 2 separate wars. Léo Major was born in 1921 and raised in Montreal in a working-class French-Canadian family. There was nothing about his early life that suggested the legend he'd become. He wasn't a career soldier. He wasn't looking for glory. When war broke out, Major enlisted, like thousands of other young Canadian men, into an army that would eventually put him on the beaches of Normandy. June 6th, 1944. D-Day. Major landed with the Régiment de la Chaudière, one of the first waves of Canadian troops storming into occupied France. In the chaos of those first days, Major did something that should have ended his war right there. Operating alone, he encountered a German armored vehicle, a half-track, and, through sheer nerve, managed to capture it and its crew single-handedly. That kind of action would define the rest of his life. Not recklessness, calculated, aggressive confidence that he could do what an entire squad couldn't. But a few days later, everything changed. Major and his unit ran into a group of Waffen SS soldiers. In the firefight that followed, a phosphorus grenade detonated near his face. Phosphorus doesn't just wound, it burns. It keeps burning even after the initial blast, eating through tissue on contact with air. Major took the brunt of it directly in his left eye. He should have been sent home. Doctors told him his war was over, that he needed to be evacuated back to England to recover, and likely wouldn't see combat again. Major said no. That single sentence, reportedly said to his commanding officers, is the whole story of Léo Major in 8 words. He wasn't interested in being pulled from the fight. He argued, successfully, that a sniper doesn't aim with 2 eyes anyway. 1 good eye was enough. They let him stay. From that point forward, Major fought the rest of the war half-blind, wearing a crude eye patch, and somehow became more dangerous, not less. His fellow soldiers started calling him the One-Eyed Ghost, a nickname that would follow him for the rest of his life, and one he'd earn again and again in the months that followed. By the fall of 1944, the Allies were pushing into the Netherlands in what became known as the Battle of the Scheldt, a brutal campaign to clear German forces from the waterways controlling access to the port of Antwerp. It was cold, flooded, miserable fighting, village by village. During this campaign, a patrol of fresh Canadian recruits went missing, overdue and unaccounted for. Major was sent out, alone, to find them. He didn't just find them. Along the way, acting completely on his own, Major captured 93 German soldiers. 93 enemy combatants, taken by a single Canadian private working solo, armed with nothing but nerve, bluff, and a willingness to walk directly into danger that would make most soldiers turn back. For this, Major was recommended for the Distinguished Conduct Medal, one of the British Commonwealth's highest awards for gallantry, second only to the Victoria Cross. He turned it down. According to accounts from those who knew him, Major refused the medal because he considered the commanding officer overseeing the ceremony Field Marshal Bernard Montgomery, incompetent, and he didn't want the award from his hands. Whether that story is told with some embellishment over the years or not, it tells you exactly who Léo Major was. This wasn't a man chasing recognition. He fought because the mission mattered to him, not for medals, not for ceremonies, not for anyone's approval. Then, in February 1945, disaster struck in a completely different way. The truck carrying Major back to camp hit a landmine. Everyone else on board was killed. Major survived, but suffered severe back injuries in the blast. Once again, doctors told him his war was over. Once again, he refused to accept that. 2 months later, still recovering, still half blind, still nursing a broken back, Léo Major would walk into the most dangerous night of his life. April 1945. The war in Europe is in its final weeks. Canadian forces are advancing through the Netherlands, and ahead of them sits the city of Zwolle, occupied by a German garrison, its size and strength unknown. Command needed eyes on the ground. On the night of April 13th, Major and a close friend, Corporal Willie Arsenault, were sent on a 2-man reconnaissance mission. Sneak toward the outskirts, assess the German presence, and, if possible, make contact with the Dutch resistance. It was supposed to be quiet, in and out. It didn't stay quiet for long. As the 2 men approached the edge of the city, they ran into a German patrol. Machine gun fire cut through the dark. Willie Arsenault, Major's friend, was hit. He didn't survive. Major returned fire and killed the German soldiers responsible, but it was too late. His friend was gone, and in that moment, according to Major's own later account, something in him changed. He didn't retreat. He didn't report back and wait for orders. He made a decision that, on paper, sounds insane. He was going to take the city by himself. Around 1 in the morning, Léo Major walked into Zwolle carrying 2 submachine guns and a bag of grenades. A city held by a garrison of German troops. Some estimates put the number in the hundreds. Others describe a force close to 1,000. And he had no backup, no radio contact, no plan except one: make them believe an entire army was coming. He started immediately. Grenades in alleyways, bursts of gunfire from one street, then sprinting to another position and firing again from a completely different direction. To anyone listening, and everyone in that city was listening, it sounded like coordinated squads attacking from multiple angles simultaneously. German soldiers scrambled out of buildings, unsure of what they were even facing. Some ran directly into Major and were captured or killed on the spot. Others fled deeper into the city, spreading panic to units who hadn't even made contact yet. Major didn't stop moving. At one point, he found a German staff car and used it to race between locations even faster, making the illusion of a large-scale assault even more convincing. He also managed to make contact with members of the Dutch resistance hiding in the city, and with their help, he organized small groups to add to the chaos, striking at multiple points and reinforcing the impression that Zwolle was under full-scale attack. At one point in the night, Major captured a German officer directly, and instead of simply taking him prisoner, he used him. He convinced the officer that a massive Canadian force was closing in on the city, about to flatten it. Then he let the officer go, knowing he'd run straight back to warn his command and, more importantly, convince them to pull out rather than fight. It worked exactly as he hoped. For nearly 6 hours, Léo Major fought a one-man war across the streets of Zwolle. And by the time the sun started coming up on April 14th, the German garrison, an entire occupying force, had abandoned the city. There was a planned Canadian artillery bombardment scheduled for that same morning, intended to soften German defenses before a full assault. Because Zwolle was already clear, that bombardment never happened. Historians estimate that Major's one-man operation spared the city and its roughly 50,000 residents from that planned attack entirely. One soldier, one night, 50,000 lives untouched by the war that would have otherwise landed directly on their homes. Léo Major was awarded the Distinguished Conduct Medal for what he did that night, the same medal he'd turned down months earlier. This time, it seems, the story goes that circumstances, or perhaps his own quiet pride in what he'd accomplished, meant he accepted it. When the war ended, Major went home to Montreal and did something almost stranger than anything he'd done in combat. He tried to live a normal life. He worked as a plumber. He got married. He stayed almost entirely silent about what he'd done in Zwolle. He didn't talk about it at dinner parties. He didn't write a memoir. For over 2 decades, most people in his own life had no real idea what he'd accomplished. Then, in August 1950, with the Korean War underway, Léo Major volunteered again. Think about that for a second. A man in his late 20s, blind in one eye, with a back injury from a landmine explosion that had killed everyone else in the vehicle with him, walked back into a recruitment office and signed up for another war. He was assigned as a scout and sniper, the exact role he'd fought to keep years earlier, using only his right eye. In November 1951, Major took part in the defense of Hill 355, a strategically vital position along the front line. In brutal fighting, he led a small group in retaking and holding the position against a much larger Chinese assault, refusing to fall back even as his unit was pushed to the edge. For this, Léo Major was awarded the Distinguished Conduct Medal a second time. No other Canadian soldier in the entire history of the country's military has ever earned that medal twice, in 2 different conflicts, a full 6 years apart. Léo Major never sought credit for what he did. For years, most of Canada didn't know his name, but the people of Zwolle never forgot him. In 1969, residents of the city tracked him down and invited him back for a ceremony honoring the liberation. Zwolle later named a street after him and made him an honorary citizen. To this day, the city holds an annual remembrance of what happened that night in April 1945. Léo Major passed away in Montreal on October 12, 2008, at the age of 87. Dutch dignitaries, including the mayor of Zwolle, traveled to attend his funeral, honoring a man that an entire city still considered its liberator 6 decades later. He once summed up his own story in a single sentence: "I fought the war with only one eye, and I did pretty good." That might be the most Canadian understatement in military history. One eye, one man, one city, and 50,000 people, still standing because he refused to stop. If this story moved you, do me a favor. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications, because there's another forgotten hero waiting for you next week on Battlefield Chronicles. And if you think someone else needs to hear this story too, share this video with them. These stories deserve to be remembered, and that only happens if we keep passing them on. Drop a comment and let me know who you want covered next. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.